Congratulations on passing the most intense background check in human history. You survived the theological vetting, the psychological screenings, and the awkward interview where three cardinals stared at you like you were trying to steal their Wi-Fi password. You thought this job would turn you into a high-stakes combination of Indiana Jones and a religious ninja. You expected to spend your mornings dodging ancient dart traps, decoding cryptic anagrams left behind by Leonardo da Vinci, and occasionally fistfighting a member of the Illuminati in a dark hallway. Instead, your new supervisor hands you a bottle of generic glass cleaner, a microfiber cloth, and a key card that looks like it belongs to a mid-tier regional Marriott. Welcome to your first day as an archive keeper for the Vatican. The first thing you learn on the job is that the marketing department for Hollywood has lied to you. Absolutely everyone. For centuries, people have looked at this place and assumed the word secret meant we were. Hiding the blueprints for Noah's Ark, or a map to the Fountain of Youth. In reality, the word stems from the Latin secretum, which just means private property. It means this entire underground labyrinth is technically just the Pope's personal filing cabinet. It is basically a giant, heavily fortified garage sale of historical administrative paperwork. Your job is less about protecting forbidden knowledge and more about running a deeply haunted, hyper-secure version of the local DMV. If you ever wanted to know how much tax a medieval village paid in sheepskins back in the year 1200, you are in the absolute right place. If you came here looking for the coordinates to Atlantis, you are going to be profoundly disappointed. But before you can even touch a document, you have to sign a non-disclosure agreement that feels like it was written by a paranoid corporate attorney who also happens to own an excommunication stamp. Breaking this agreement doesn't just get you fired and sent to court. It technically triggers an automatic excommunication, which means you are essentially banned from heaven because you leaked a pope's grocery list from the Renaissance. That is a very weird thing to explain to your next employer during a job interview. So you keep your mouth shut, you put on your orthopedic shoes, and you prepare to face the physical reality of the vault. The sheer scale of this place is the first thing that breaks your brain. You were looking at roughly 53 miles of continuous wooden and metal shelving. That is 85 kilometers of dead people's thoughts stacked on top of each other in the dark. If you laid all these shelves out in a straight line, you could walk from Baltimore to Washington, D.C., and you would still be surrounded by papal correspondence. Walking 53 miles a day just to find out Pope Innocent III had strong, aggressive thoughts about medieval cheese prices is a real vibe check. You don't need a whip or a leather jacket for this job. You need a Fitbit and a massive supply of ibuprofen. The archives are divided into different sections, including a massive underground concrete bunker built directly under a Vatican courtyard. They call it the bunker, and it feels exactly like a high-end wine cellar, except instead of expensive Merlot, it is filled with centuries of human drama and bad handwriting. The filing system down here is its own unique nightmare. We are talking about an institution that took 350 years to officially apologize to Galileo. So you can imagine how fast they are to adopt modern digital inventory systems. There are indices that were written by hand in the 17th century, and if you don't understand the specific looping cursive of a dead Italian monk, you are never finding that document. If you misplace a single volume down here, you haven't just lost a file. You have effectively deleted a 20-year chunk of European history until someone else stumbles over it in 3 generations. Imagine the stress of dropping a folder and realizing you just erased the entire administrative history of 14th century Belgium. That is why the vetting process for outsiders who want to study here is so ridiculously strict. We don't just let anyone wander into the bunker because they watched a documentary on the History Channel after 2 beers. Only serious accredited scholars are allowed anywhere near this place. And even then, they don't get to browse the shelves. They have to sit in a designated reading room, like polite students, while you, the keeper, descend into the depths to fetch their specific request. They are allowed to ask for 3 specific documents a day. That is it. If they write down the wrong index number, that is their problem. And their entire day of research is completely ruined. It is a beautiful system of academic gatekeeping that keeps the casual weirdos out and keeps the serious historians suffering in silence. You quickly realize that the scholars aren't looking for magic spells. They're looking for the absolute blockbusters of human history that happen to be sitting on our shelves like old yearbooks. One morning, you might find yourself retrieving the actual physical trial records of Galileo Galilei from 1633. You hold the parchment where the Catholic Church told the man who discovered the moons of Jupiter that he needed to stop talking about the sun. It is a sobering piece of history, written in beautiful, fading ink that represents the exact moment science and theology had an incredibly awkward collision. Then, that afternoon, you have to go fetch the absolute peak of historical relationship drama. You pull out a massive parchment scroll from the year 1530. It is a letter signed by 83 English peers, including archbishops, dukes, and earls, all writing to Pope Clement VII. They are basically begging the Pope to annul the marriage between King Henry VIII and Catherine of Aragon. The document is massive, and it has 83 individual red wax seals hanging from it by silk ribbons. Reading Henry VIII's breakup petition to the Vatican makes you realize that he wrote exactly like an unhinged, toxic ex-boyfriend in a 2-minute group chat. He is essentially telling the leader of the Western Church that if he doesn't get his divorce immediately, he is going to flip the entire table and start his own religion. Which, to be fair, is exactly what he did. Holding that scroll is like holding a live grenade that went off 500 years ago and changed the entire map of the world. But the everyday history buffs who email the Vatican don't care about British marital drama or Italian astronomers. They want the internet's favorite myths every single week. The archive receives inquiries from people who are absolutely convinced we are hiding a fleet of alien spacecraft behind the shelves of the secret archives. They think there are gray alien skulls resting in velvet boxes next to the letters of St. Peter. You have to spend your time calmly explaining that if the Vatican had access to advanced interstellar technology, we would absolutely use it to fix the freight elevator in the West Wing. That elevator has been shaking like a washing machine full of bricks since the 90s, and no amount of prayer or alien engineering has saved it. Then there is the myth of the Chronovisor. This is the legendary time-viewing device that a Benedictine monk named Father Pellegrino Ernetti claimed to build back in the 1950s. According to internet lore, this machine could tune into past events like a television, allowing the Vatican to watch the crucifixion of Jesus or the founding of Rome in high definition. Conspiracy theorists love to claim the Chronovisor is disassembled and hidden in the deepest corner of the archive vault to prevent the world from knowing the truth. The reality is that if we actually possessed a machine that could peer through time and space, we would not be managing our massive historical inventory on a version of Microsoft Excel from 2007. That we would use the time machine to figure out who forgot to label box number 412 back in the year 1600. The truth is always much more boring than the conspiracy. But the boring truth is exactly what makes the archives so heavy. The real horrors you face down here aren't supernatural or extraterrestrial. They are entirely environmental. Your biggest enemies aren't secret societies or demonic possessions. Your biggest enemies are humidity dust mites and a terrifying condition known as iron gall ink rot. For centuries, people wrote important documents using an ink made from iron salts and vegetable acids. It looks beautiful when it's fresh, but over hundreds of years, the acid in the ink literally starts to eat through the parchment from the inside out, if you aren't careful. A priceless letter from a medieval emperor can turn into a delicate piece of lace where all of the words have literally burned holes through the paper. That is why you spend your entire shift living in a subterranean bunker that is permanently chilled to a crisp 60 degrees Fahrenheit. It is an environment designed to preserve dead sheepskin, which means you are personally freezing to death for 8 hours a day. You have to wear layers of wool and special white gloves while dealing with documents that will literally disintegrate if they experience a mild summer afternoon. You are basically a high-end babysitter for fragile, ancient dust. And the dust down here is ancient. It is a mixture of crumbling linen paper, deteriorating leather bindings, and the literal skin cells of historical figures who have been dead for a millennium. When you sneeze in the Vatican Archives, you are probably inhaling a tiny particle of an old cardinal who died of the plague in 1348. It is a bizarre, existential way to make a living. You spend your days reading letters from people who thought they were the center of the universe, only to realize they are now just an inventory number in a basement. You find love letters from kings, frantic military dispatches from generals whose empires no longer exist, and bitter complaints from monks about the quality of the monastery beer. It makes you look at modern American life with a completely different perspective. You see people screaming at each other on social media or stressing out over corporate emails, and you realize that 500 years from now, all of that energy will just be a collection of digital dust that some poor archivist will have to sort through. Your entire perspective on time gets completely warped. A document from the 1800s feels brand new to you. You look at a letter from Napoleon Bonaparte and you think to yourself, oh look, some contemporary pop culture. You don't even get excited until the document is old enough to have survived the Crusades. This crushing sense of reality is exactly why Pope Francis made a massive move back in 2019. He issued an official decree that changed the name of the institution from the Vatican Secret Archive to the Vatican Apostolic Archive. It was essentially a massive global public relations rebranding campaign. The Pope was basically looking at the internet and saying, look, please stop asking us about the lizard people and the Illuminati. It is literally just centuries of human resources complaints and tax returns. They took the word secret out of the title to lower the expectations of the conspiracy theorists who keep trying to sneak in with flashlights. The name change did help a little bit, but it didn't change the daily reality of the workload. There are still millions of documents that haven't even been properly cataloged yet. There are boxes of papers from the 20th century that are sitting in storage rooms, waiting for someone to spend 40 years reading through them. That is the ultimate secret of the Vatican Archives. The secret isn't that there is something magical hidden down here. The secret is that humanity has always been incredibly bureaucratic, deeply dramatic, and obsessed with keeping receipts. We have recorded every single argument, every single piece of land ownership, and every single theological debate for over 1,000 years. It is a monument to our collective inability to let things go. So as you close up the vault at the end of your shift, you turn off the lights on 53 miles of human history. You lock the heavy security doors that protect the letters of Michelangelo and the trials of heretics. You walk out into the warm Italian air, leave the Vatican walls, and head down to the local cafe. You sit down, pull out your phone, and open your email app. You see 30 new messages from your landlord, your bank, and your coworkers arguing about a meeting schedule. And for the first time in your life, you smile. Because you know that one day, all of this absolute nonsense is going to make some future archive keeper incredibly tired. So what about you? Are you the kind of person who could spend 40 years organizing the Pope's old tax receipts in a freezing basement? Or are you still convinced we are hiding a UFO behind the Galileo files? Let me know down there in the comments.